The silence in the ballroom felt heavy, almost physical. I stood there in a rented tuxedo that pinched at the shoulders, watching my son Ethan shake hands with Charles Whitmore, the chairman of Whitmore Dynamics. Ethan looked exactly like the man he wanted the world to see: confident, polished, expensive. His tailored Brioni suit fit him perfectly, and the silver Patek Philippe on his wrist caught the glow of the chandeliers above us. "Mr. Whitmore," Ethan said, placing a casual hand on my back, "this is my father." He hesitated just long enough to make it hurt. I've been between jobs for a while. Kind of semi-retired. Not really working at the moment." Whitmore glanced at me, then back at Ethan, a polite smile flickering across his face. My wife Laura tightened her grip on my arm. She knew. She'd known for weeks what I was planning. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how we got here. My name is Michael Reeves. I'm 64 years old. For 36 years, I owned and ran Reeves Precision Manufacturing, a mid-sized operation outside Columbus, Ohio. We produced specialized components for medical imaging devices and commercial aviation. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, honest work, and it built everything my family has. Here's the part Ethan never knew. When he was born, Laura and I made a quiet decision. We had seen too many wealthy families raise children who never learned the value of effort, kids who inherited money but never earned purpose. We didn't want that for our son. So I kept my business life invisible at home. I wore plain clothes. I drove an aging Toyota Camry. I told Ethan I worked as a manufacturing consultant, which wasn't exactly a lie. I consulted every day. I just happened to consult for my own company. Laura played her part perfectly. She worked as a public school counselor, a job she genuinely loved. We lived in a modest 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. We budgeted vacations. We talked openly about expenses. Ethan grew up believing we were comfortable, but never rich. And for a long time, it worked. He got a job at 16. Earned a scholarship to Indiana University. Graduated near the top of his class. Landed a role at a major financial firm in Chicago. But success changed him. The Ethan who came home for Thanksgiving last year wasn't the boy we raised. He talked non-stop about bonuses, clients, exclusive retreats. He'd bought a luxury condo downtown and leased a car that cost more per month than our old mortgage payment. Worst of all, he started looking at Laura and me with something that felt like embarrassment. "You know, Dad," he'd say carefully, "if money ever gets tight, I can help out." "We're fine," I'd answer. "Well, you're not getting any younger." And if work's been inconsistent, Laura would redirect the conversation, but I saw the hurt in her eyes every time. The breaking point came 3 months ago. Ethan called to say he'd been invited to the Whitmore Dynamics annual leadership gala. "It's a big deal," he said. "The CEO will be there. They encouraged us to bring family." "Black tie?" I asked. "Yeah. Do you even own a tux?" "I can rent one." A pause. "Dad, it's a very high-level crowd. Important people. Maybe just don't talk too much about your work situation." That was the moment I knew. I'd been watching him drift for years, not into entitlement, but into arrogance. He wasn't proud of where he came from anymore. He was ashamed of it. So I made a phone call. Charles Whitmore and I had crossed paths at trade conventions for years. My company supplied components to 3 of his facilities. We weren't friends, but we respected each other. When I explained what I wanted to do, he laughed so hard I had to pull the phone away. "Michael," he said, "that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I'm in." And now, standing in that ballroom as my son introduced me as essentially unemployed, I watched Whitmore play his part flawlessly. "Unemployed?" he said, eyebrows lifting. "That's unfortunate. What field were you in, Mr. Reeves?" "Manufacturing," I replied. "Mostly consulting." Whitmore nodded thoughtfully. "Well, some sectors are struggling. Ethan, you're fortunate to be in a more resilient industry." Ethan smiled proudly. "I've worked very hard to get where I am," he said. "Not everyone has that kind of drive." He didn't look at me once. Laura's fingers pressed into my arm. I squeezed her hand gently. "Not yet." Dinner unfolded exactly as I expected. Ethan dominated the table. Stories of deals closed, names dropped, vacations described. He barely acknowledged his mother. He spoke to me only to explain things he assumed were beyond my understanding. I watched him, my son, a stranger in a designer suit, and felt something break quietly inside me. This was my failure. ID taught him the value of work, but not the value of people. Halfway through the meal, Whitmore stood to speak. After the usual corporate pleasantries, he paused. Before we conclude, he said, I want to recognize someone special this evening. Our success is built on partnerships, and one of our most trusted partners is here tonight. Ethan looked around the room, clearly trying to spot whoever Whitmore meant. And that's when the room changed. This man has run his company with integrity for more than 30 years, Whitmore continued. His products set the benchmark for precision manufacturing. His ethics are beyond question. And despite everything Hez achieved, Hez remained grounded. His eyes found mine across the room. He smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing Michael Reeves, founder and CEO of Reeves Precision Manufacturing. The room broke into applause. I stood slowly, acknowledging the recognition with a small nod. People at nearby tables turned toward me, clapping, some rising from their chairs. I didn't look at Ethan yet. Whitmore went on. Michael's company has supplied critical components to our medical and aviation divisions for over 15 years. His attention to quality and his ability to solve problems under pressure have played a key role in our success. On behalf of Whitmore Dynamics, thank you. The applause swelled again. Whitmore raised his glass. The room followed. Only then did I turn toward my son. Ethan had gone pale. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes flicked between Whitmore and me, like his brain was trying, and failing, to catch up. Dad, he whispered. You're a CEO. Sit down, Ethan, I said quietly. We'll talk after dinner. But he couldn't sit. He stood frozen, the weight of realization crashing down on him. Every condescending comment, every pitying look, every time Hed offered to help his struggling father. Laura squeezed my hand under the table. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. The rest of dinner was painful. Ethan barely touched his plate. He kept starting to speak, then stopping. Meanwhile, guests came by to talk shop with me, contracts, supply chains, shared projects. And I watched my son's face as he understood that the man Hed introduced as unemployed was known and respected by some of the most powerful people in the room. After dessert, I suggested we step outside. The terrace overlooked the river, city lights reflecting off the dark water. Early summer air, warm, still. Ethan leaned against the railing, his head in his hands. Why? He asked finally. Why didn't you tell me? I did, I said. I told you I worked in manufacturing. I told you I ran a small company. You decided it didn't matter. But you lived like we had nothing. That house. That car. The house is paid for, I said. And the car runs just fine. Your mother and I didn't need more. He shook his head, still overwhelmed. My scholarship, did you? No, I cut in gently. That was you. You earned it. Same with your job. I've never pulled a string for you. He was quiet for a long time. You must think him awful, he said. I think you're a young man who forgot something important, I replied. You work hard. You earned your success. But somewhere along the way, you started believing that success made you better than other people. His voice cracked. I was ashamed of you, he admitted. I didn't want people to know what I thought you were. And what was that? I asked. A failure, he whispered. Someone who couldn't make it. And if I had been? I asked. If I really were struggling at 63, would that make me less worthy as a man? As your father? His shoulders began to shake. He was crying now, like the boy who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares. I became everything you warned me about, he said. Not everything, I said softly. You became disciplined, capable, successful. Those are good things. But you forgot something fundamental. What? That dignity isn't tied to income or titles. It's about how you treat people, especially those who have less. How can you even look at me right now? He asked. I put a hand on his shoulder. Because you're my son. And because I believe you can be better. That's why I did this, not to humiliate you, but to stop you before this became who you are. We stood there in silence, watching boats drift across the water. Finally, he asked, "What do I do now?" "You start over," I said. "Not with your career, you earned that. But with how you see people. Your mother is still a librarian. Does that make her less valuable than you?" He shook his head. "The janitor in your office building? The barista who makes your coffee? Are they worth less respect?" "No," he said quietly. "Then act like it. Treat people with dignity, not because they might secretly be someone important, but because they're human." He wiped his eyes. "Can you forgive me?" "I already have," I said. "The real question is whether you can forgive yourself and choose to do better." He nodded, then asked softly, "Does Mom hate me?" I smiled. "Your mother loves you more than anything. But yes, you've hurt her. She wanted to tell you the truth many times." I asked her not to. "I need to apologize to her," he said. "Yes," I replied. "You do." "You do," I said quietly. "And Ethan, you need to forgive yourself too. The real you, the good man I know, is still there. He deserves better than how you've been treating him." We went back inside. Laura was waiting near the entrance, her purse clutched in both hands. The worry on her face melted the moment she saw Ethan walk toward her. He didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around her the way he used to when he was small. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said into her shoulder. "I really am." She held him tightly. "I know," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart." As we were leaving, Whitmore caught up with us. "Michael," he said, lowering his voice, though his eyes were bright with amusement. "I hope I didn't go too far." "You were perfect," I told him. "Thank you for playing along." "My pleasure," he said. "Though I have to ask, what now? Are you going public with it?" "No," I said. This wasn't about embarrassing my son. It was for him. That's all. Whitmore nodded, then turned to Ethan. "You're a sharp banker," he said. "I've heard good things. But tonight, you learned something more important than anything they taught you in business school. Don't waste it." "I won't," Ethan said. "I promise." The drive home was quiet. Ethan offered to drive us, but I insisted on taking my old Civic. In the rearview mirror, I couldn't help smiling at the sight of his luxury sedan following my decade-old car. When we got home, Ethan came inside. He stood in the living room and really looked around, as if seeing it for the first time in years. "I used to love this house," he said softly. "My 8th birthday was in that backyard. I learned to ride my bike on this street." He shook his head. "When did I start being ashamed of it?" "When you started measuring things by what they cost instead of what they meant," Laura said gently. Ethan sat down on the couch, the same one Wed had since his high school days. "Tell me about the company," he said to me. "All of it. I want to know." So I did. We stayed up until nearly 2 in the morning. I told him how I started Reeves Precision Manufacturing, about the early years, the long nights, the near collapse in the early 90s, the contracts that changed everything, the risks and the growth. Laura added her own stories, the sacrifices, the celebrations, the fear, the pride. And Ethan listened. Not to impress. Not to compare. But to understand. Before he left, he asked, "Can I come by your office sometime? See what you actually do." "I'd like that," I said. The changes that followed were small at first, but real. Ethan started coming to Sunday dinners again. He showed up in jeans and a t-shirt instead of designer clothes. He asked Laura about her work and actually listened to the answers. I heard from Whitmore that Ethan had organized a charity initiative at his firm to support local trade schools. Apparently, he gave a speech about the dignity of work that even the senior partners talked about afterward. 2 months after the gala, Ethan showed up at our house at 7 in the morning. "You're here early," I said, still in my robe. "I want to work at the factory for a day," he said. "If that's okay. I want to see what you really do." So I took him. We started with the morning production meeting. My team was polite, cautious, this polished banker stepping into their world of machines and grease. But Ethan rolled up his sleeves. Literally. He asked to shadow different workers. He wanted to understand every step of the process. By lunchtime, his hands were dirty, his shirt stained, and he was grinning like he hadn't in years. And in that moment, Watching my son laugh alongside people he'd once overlooked, I felt something settle inside me. The lesson had landed. Not because I embarrassed him. Not because I revealed my success. But because he finally saw what mattered. And sometimes, that's all a father can hope for. "This is incredible, Dad," Ethan said as we ate sandwiches in my office. "The precision, the engineering, the problem-solving. I honestly had no idea." "Most people don't," I said. "They think manufacturing is low-skill work. But what we do here demands experience, creativity, and discipline." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I've been such an idiot." "You've been learning," I corrected gently. "That's not the same thing." That evening, he asked if he could bring someone by the following week. "Her name's Claire," he said, a little awkwardly. "She's a social worker. We met at a coffee shop a few weeks ago." Laura and I exchanged a look. "I think you'll like her," he added. "She's different. Real." Claire turned out to be exactly that. Smart, grounded, kind. Ethan told us later that early on Head mentioned his unemployed father, and Shed simply shrugged and said, "So what? My dad's been between jobs for years. Life happens." That lack of judgment had stayed with him. "She helped me see who I was becoming," Ethan admitted after she left. "When I told her about the gala, about what you did, she said it was the best thing that could have happened to me." "She's right," Laura said softly. "And I'm glad you listened." 6 months later, Ethan came to us with news. "I'm leaving the firm," he said. "I'm starting a fund that invests in small and mid-sized manufacturing companies. Companies like yours, Dad. The ones nobody talks about because they aren't flashy." "That's a big shift," I said carefully. "I know. It'll probably make less money at first. But this matters. This work keeps communities alive." He hesitated, then added, "I was hoping you might consider being an advisor. I don't deserve it after how I acted, but I value your guidance." "I'd be honored," I said without hesitation. Laura was crying again, the good kind. "Oh," Ethan added, smiling. "And Claire and I are talking about getting married. Nothing official yet. But when we do, I was hoping we could have it here. In the backyard. Small. Simple. Nothing would make us happier," Laura said, pulling him into a hug. That was a year ago. Today, I'm sitting on the back porch watching Ethan and Claire set up tables for their engagement party. They did get married here, 50 guests instead of the 500 Ethan might be invited in his old life. It was perfect. His fund is doing well. Has helped a dozen manufacturing companies expand, saved jobs that would have been outsourced. He works harder now than he ever did in finance, and Hez happier. He still drives the BMW. But he also bought a used pickup for factory visits. Says it just makes more sense. I think it makes him feel connected to something real. Laura comes out with 2 glasses of lemonade and sits beside me. We watch our son laugh with Claire, then pause to help her grandmother up the porch steps. We watch him greet every guest with the same warmth. "You did good," Laura says quietly. "We did good," I reply. "Think Hez really learned?" "I think Hez learning," I say. "That's all any of us can do." Ethan notices us watching and walks over, sitting on the porch step below us. "I never really thanked you," he says. "For the gala." "You have," I tell him. "No, I mean properly. You could have let me keep going. You didn't. You cared enough to stop me." He looks at both of us. "I'm who I am because you raised me twice. Once as a kid. And once as an adult." My throat tightens. "You did the hard part," I say. "You listened. You changed. I learned from the best," he says, smiling. Then more seriously, "I want to be the kind of father you are someday. One who knows when to step back and when to step in." "You will be," Laura says. Claire calls for him, needing help with something. He jogs off. Laura and I sit quietly, watching the party take shape. "You know," I say after a moment, "I might finally upgrade the Honda." She laughs. "Don't get reckless. Maybe a 3-year-old model. Really living large." We laugh together. Out in the yard, Ethan is introducing his grandmother. "This is my dad's mom," I hear him say. "She cleaned offices for 40 years. She taught me my first lesson about respect. She's the wisest person I know." Grandma Rose beams. And I sit there, beside my wife, in the house we never pretended was anything it wasn't, knowing that sometimes the greatest inheritance you give your child isn't money or status. It's the courage to become better than they were yesterday.